his environment, to which Joseph Smith could not have gained access through natural means. Within its brief text, for instance, the book tells us that Abraham's own fathers had turned aside from worship of the true God to the service of the god of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. The Bible, on the other hand, appears to know nothing about the idolatry of Abraham's ancestors. However, their polytheism, along with Abraham's conversion to the worship of the true God and his attempt to convert his family, is a common theme of many very old Jewish stories. The book of Abraham refers to a place that it calls the plain of Olishem. No such place name occurs in the Bible, but it does occur in an inscription of the Akkadian ruler Naram Sin, dating to about 2250 BC, the approximate time of Abraham. It refers to a place located in northwestern Syria, in the area near Amman and Ebla. It also appears in a list of cities under the reign of Sesostris III, who ruled between 1873 and 1854 BC, where it's 2 towns north of Ebla. The idolatrous worship of the gods of Elkanah, Libnah, Mamakra, and Korash that's described in the book of Abraham also seems to be identifiable in the ancient world, despite the fact that the Bible makes no mention of them. Indeed, Elkanah, Libnah, and Korash are all known from inscriptions dating to roughly Abraham's time and place. Furthermore, although the average person would never have thought of it, the ensemble of 4 figures depicted at figure 6 of facsimile 2 does indeed represent this earth in its 4 quarters, just as the book of Abraham says. So too, figure 11 of facsimile 1 is, says the explanation given by the book of Abraham, designed to represent the pillars of heaven as understood by the Egyptians. And in fact, the phrase pillars of heaven does occur in Egyptian literature, and the forms in facsimile 1 are evidently the characteristic lintel and post pattern familiar from the architecture of early temple complexes, such as that at Saqqara. Furthermore, the identification of the angled lines below the lion couch in facsimile 1 as the firmament over our heads must seem rather strange to any modern reader. It only makes sense when we realize that the lines represent the waves of the water in which the crocodile is swimming, and that the ancient Egyptians conceived of heaven as a heavenly ocean. One noteworthy element of the religious situation portrayed in the book of Abraham is the identification of a crocodile as the idolatrous god of Pharaoh. What ill-educated 19th century American, seeing a crocodile lurking underneath the lion couch in facsimile number 1, would ever have thought of such an identification? Yet the book of Abraham is precisely correct on this point. Unas, for example, was the last king of the 5th dynasty around 2300 BC, and his pyramid still stands at Saqqara, south of modern Cairo. Utterance 317 of the Unas pyramid texts includes the following: "The king appears as the crocodile god Sobek. Unas has come today from the overflowing flood. Unas is Sobek, green-plumed, wakeful, alert. Unas arises as Sobek, son of Neith." Speaking of the Egyptian Middle Kingdom, during which the traditional dating of Abraham places his lifetime, one scholar observes that the god Sobek is viewed as a manifestation of Horus, the god most closely identified with the kingship of Egypt. Intriguingly, Middle Kingdom Egypt, around the time of the 12th dynasty, the most likely time of Abraham's own life, saw a great deal of activity in the large oasis to the southwest of modern Cairo, known as the Fayum. Crocodiles were common there, and Sobek was the chief local deity. The last king of the 12th dynasty even adopted the name of the crocodile god, calling himself Nefru Sobek, and 5 pharaohs of the 13th dynasty took the name Sebek Hotep. The book of Abraham tells of an attempted sacrifice of the patriarch. The Bible knows nothing of such an episode, but post-biblical literature repeatedly mentions Abraham's miraculous deliverance from an attempt to kill him. And now the name of Abraham has actually been found in a 3rd century AD Egyptian papyrus associated with a lion couch scene, much like that in facsimile 1. When one critic, attempting rather desperately to neutralize this piece of support for Joseph Smith's prophetic calling, claimed, contradicting not only Latter-day Saint scholars but prominent non-Mormon experts, that the text shouldn't actually be read as Abraham, but rather as some sort of magical term, the Egyptologist John Gee responded with an article aptly titled, "Abracadabra, Isaac and Jacob." Unsurprisingly, Abraham leaves the land of Ur not long after his miraculous escape from death and goes to Canaan. When the autobiographical portion of the book of Abraham ends, we find him about to enter the land of Egypt. There, in order to preserve his life, the Lord advises him to conceal the fact that Sarai is his wife, and instead to tell the Egyptians that she is his sister. The Bible records the story of Abraham's lie, but is silent regarding the divine counsel that authorized it. However, the Genesis Apocryphon, a document found among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls only in the mid-20th century, agrees with the book of Abraham that the patriarch's behavior in this matter was divinely ordained. And there was good reason. The crocodile king of utterance 317 in the Unas Pyramid texts, which I've already cited, is portrayed as willful and tyrannical. Specifically, he's said to steal wives from their husbands whenever it suits him to do so. That is, of course, exactly what Abraham expected Pharaoh to do to Sarai. The third chapter of the book of Abraham offers a remarkable picture of what might be termed Abrahamic astronomy. The prophet is shown various features of the heavens, including even the great astronomical body Kolob, which is set nigh unto the throne of God. Recent research indicates that the astronomical model portrayed here fits very well among ancient geocentric or earth-centered notions. It's interesting to note that although nothing in the Genesis account of Abraham's life suggests that he had any special astronomical interests or knowledge, many post-biblical texts preserve an image of him that accords perfectly with that in the book of Abraham. The first-century Jewish historian Josephus, for instance, knows of earlier records that portray Abraham as a man righteous and great and skillful in the celestial science. In the Testament of Abraham, which dates to the 1st or 2nd century A.D., the patriarch is caught up into heaven and given a spectacular view of the earth and all its inhabitants. Both the Book of Jubilees, composed in the 2nd century B.C., and the 7th century A.D. Muslim Quran portray Abraham as a meditative contemplator of the skies. The 1st to 2nd century A.D. Apocalypse of Abraham tells how the patriarch was taken into heaven, where, among other things, he beheld hosts of stars and the orders they were commanded to carry out, and the elements of earth obeying them. The 10th century Muslim scholar At-Tabari, widely regarded as the greatest of medieval commentators on the Quran because, among other things, of his careful gathering up of earlier materials, knows of a vision in which the 7 heavens were opened up to Abraham, up to and including the throne. According to the book of Abraham, the Lord wanted the patriarch to transmit the astronomical and theological information he'd received to the Egyptians. I show these things unto thee before ye go into Egypt, that ye may declare all these words. And in fact, although the text of the book of Abraham, as we currently possess it, doesn't actually carry the story into Egypt, he seems to have fulfilled his divine assignment. Facsimile 3 shows an Egyptian scene in which Abraham is reasoning upon the principles of astronomy in the king's court. Josephus, too, knows of Abraham's going into Egypt to teach astronomy, and the great church historian Eusebius of Caesarea, who lived in the late 3rd and early 4th centuries, preserves an even earlier account in his Praeparatio Evangelica that has Abraham going to Egypt, and there teaching astronomy or astrology to both the priests of Heliopolis and to Pharaoh himself. The pagan astronomers Firmicus Maternus and Vettius Valens preserve quotations of astronomical material attributed to Abraham. The 4th and 5th chapters of the book of Abraham record a vision of the creation received by the prophet that parallels the account given in Genesis, but also differs from it in certain important ways. Here, too, the account of Abraham preserved in the Pearl of Great Price goes beyond that in the Bible, but receives support from sources that Joseph Smith is unlikely to have known. At-Tabari preserves reports that Abraham was granted a vision of the creation. One of the interesting elements of the creation account given in Abraham 4 through 5 is its use of the verb to organize, by which we're given to understand that the gods formed the heavens and the earth out of pre-existing materials. Now, this flies in the face of centuries of Christian tradition, which have insisted that God created the universe ex nihilo, that is, from nothing. Once again, however, the book of Abraham finds support in current scholarship. The doctrine of ex nihilo creation simply cannot be found in Genesis or anywhere else in the Old Testament. Ancient Jewish writings claim that God created the universe by giving form to formless matter. It's not until the 2nd century after Christ that Christian thinkers began, under the influence of Greek philosophy, to teach creation from nothing, and the doctrine gained wider acceptance only gradually thereafter. On the foundation of such scriptural texts as the Book of Mormon and the Book of Abraham, which Latter-day Saints regard as restorations of inspired ancient documents accompanied by the Bible and modern revelations, stands the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It proclaims itself the restoration of the church originally founded and led by Jesus and his disciples, with a priesthood authorized by God and restored to the earth by the ancient biblical figures John the Baptist and Peter, James, and John. In several ways, it's undeniably similar to the ancient church. It practices baptism by immersion, and it ordains its officers and, like the elders mentioned in James 5, anoints and blesses the sick by the laying on of hands. Its missionaries take its message to the ends of the earth, baptizing in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. Like the original Christian movement founded by Jesus, it's led by prophets and a council of 12 apostles. When they occur, vacancies in the apostolic council are filled so that the council continues from generation to generation. This was attempted in ancient times too, but with persecution, scattering, and death, the council of the apostles nonetheless